Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Sherry and John. I'm going to shut up now and disappear.
Thanks, Joe. Hey, everybody. Good to see you all. Like Joe said, we want this to be discussions, and I know that you've all had a lot of unique experiences and some challenges and successes. And so I'm just going to keep this real brief with an overview of the topics that we're going to be covering. So I'll just talk about immediacy and mediated immediacy real briefly, and then go over the tables. So if you did pre-read the article, awesome. If you didn't, I'll give you enough context that we'll be able to get through that. Then Sherry will talk a little bit about thinking about mediated immediacy in different ways. And after we wrap that up, then we'll have everybody in breakout rooms to brainstorm on some of these categories. So getting right into it. So immediacy, we know, are communicative behaviors that reduce physical and psychological closeness between communicators. And of course, at these times, we need to maintain physical distance between communicators. So thinking about mediated immediacy, it was defined in the article that I sent out by O'Sullivan, Hunt, and Lippert as communicative cues and mediated channels that can shape perceptions of psychological closeness between interactants. Stated another way, immediacy cues can be seen as a language of affiliation. And they provide two tables in that. And I want to go through that because those are going to be what I'm going to be asking you to generate ideas for in your breakout rooms. So I'll just share my screen with those tables. And can you all see the table on the screen? Great. So they have two dimensions that they identified. The first one is approachability. How approachable are you as an instructor? And so the subcategories within this are self-disclosure, so revealing personal information that allows others to feel they know the source. Expressiveness, varying emphasis, intensity, vividness, and tone of message. Accessibility, being accessible for communication. Informality, portraying informality and casualness. Similarity, displaying personal qualities, personal history shared by the receiver. Familiarity, providing for repeated contacts over time. Humor, the use of it. Attractiveness, displaying characteristics perceived as appealing. And this one I find a little bit interesting, and I'll talk about that a little bit more when I talk about the breakout rooms. And then expertise, where you display competence and skill related to the source's role. The second table, they identified regard as I am approaching you. And so there are four categories here: personalness, conveying that source views receivers as individuals; engagement, indicating attentiveness and practicing responsiveness to receivers; helpfulness, assisting receivers' efforts to pursue needs and goals; and politeness, following etiquette, courtesies, and other communication procedural norms. So now that we've got that quick overview, I'm going to have Sherry talk about some research that we have been doing on mediated immediacy. And we actually had a student that was interested in this before the pandemic. So this was something that we started that is actually very helpful right now. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and let Sherry talk for a little while.
One of the things that we were interested in was the use of the syllabus as a rhetorical document, and could you present immediate behaviors in a mediated way via the syllabus? And so one of the things that we did was we looked at our syllabus archive, and we pulled all sorts of messages that appeared to be immediate. And then we went to the basic course listserv. You probably got a request from us to submit any syllabi if you thought your syllabi communicated immediate messages. And so with all of that data, what we did was we created two conditions, a high immediacy and a low immediacy condition, organizing it according to Slattery and Carlson's classification of syllabi purposes. So we had a motivational section using our teaching philosophy statements. We had a structural section with our course policies, and we had an evidential purpose using our syllabus contract. And what we did then was all of those syllabi that we collected, we were looking for those two constructs of approachability and regard. And then we were looking for specific examples of self-disclosure, expressiveness, all of those variables within those constructs. And we created those two syllabi. So we created the high immediacy syllabus first, and then we created the low immediacy to match every statement that we had in the high immediacy condition. And what we found was that students perceived the instructor with a high immediate syllabus. They were more willing to go and talk to that instructor, especially if they were facing a first-year challenge. And so their willingness to communicate with that instructor improved, and their willingness to communicate with that instructor outside of class improved. And we were able to put these statements in a syllabus and actually get students in a first-year course, because every first-year student takes our course, to actually want to come to their instructors and communicate with them about a challenge they were facing this, the semester that we collected the data. And so I just kind of wanted to give you an overview of how considering mediated immediacy can help in a synchronous, an asynchronous, and a face-to-face classroom, but using mediated messages. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to John to talk about our task.
So we've kind of laid the groundwork with research, but now I want to talk about application and where the rubber meets the road. And we've all had to adjust so much, over the last 9 months. And I think being able to share the things that we've done and using this as a way to kind of map those things can be very helpful. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to split you into 4 breakout rooms, 4 different groups, and I'm going to give each group 3 of the subcategories to go over. I've got Google Docs set up for this, so I'm going to post those and the links in the chat. And so what I would like for you to do is have somebody who's kind of your designated recorder to be able to edit the Google document and facilitate a discussion about what things you've done in these distance learning times, mediated immediacy wise, that fit with these subcategories. So I'll show you what the first group's document looks like so you can get an idea of what I'm going to ask you to do in these breakout rooms. So here, this is group 1. And so I will assign group 1 3 subcategories of self-disclosure, expressiveness, and accessibility. So in order for you to have everything all in one place, I've pasted the portions of the table that are relevant. And then what I'd like for you to do is talk about examples of how you've applied these things yourself in your classes. And the goal of all of this is to have you come back and have somebody in your group or multiple people in your group willing to report and share what you generated for this, and then have the larger group be able to add some things to this in the group discussion at the end. And then I would like to compile all these, and if you're interested in getting a compilation of everything we accomplished today, I'll have Susan from Fountainhead send that out to everybody. So the next step would be breaking you into your breakout rooms. What questions do you have about what we're going to try to do? And I'll give you 20 minutes in the breakout rooms. Sherry and I will pop in and check and see, and if we need more time, we can add more time, but that's what we'll start with. So what questions are there at this point?
John, do you have the recorders determined and they already have access to the Google Doc?
No, I'm going to post the links to the Google Doc so everybody can access it. And so just within your groups, just somebody can volunteer to be the recorder.
Okay.
Thank you. What other questions do you have?
I think I'll be more likely to have questions when you pop into the breakout rooms than I do now once we try to start doing this.
Okay, great. Well, then let me go ahead and get those links up into the chat and get you into your breakout rooms, and then we'll pop around and answer questions as need be. All right. Let's see here. Can you see the groups and the links in the chat? Yes? Okay, cool. All right, let's go ahead and break you into your breakout rooms, and we'll give you 20 minutes, and we'll be around to answer any questions you might have.
Likable because apparently the syllabus can determine whether students see you as approachable or not, and if they're likely to come and talk to
so that I am at home and what that means, and you know, in terms of the space that I'm in, who I'm sharing it with, what potential interruptions might happen, just, you know, because there are 5 of us at any given time.
This sounds really basic, but the name on my screen, I will either just put Terry Metzger or Terry. I don't put Professor Metzger, although sometimes like with emails that I send, I sign them as Professor Metzger. But when doing mediated meetings like this, like using Zoom, I use my
Terry, you cut out for me the last thing you said. On mediated meetings in Zoom, you use your,
first name.
okay, that's what I thought, but you cut out for me. I wanted to just make sure. That's a good one.
I have a GroupMe for all my classes, and sometimes I'll send pictures of my pets in weird positions, or it got cold in South Georgia and we've got a short-haired dog, so we've got an Argyle sweater. I'm like, hey kiddos, it's sweater season, because it happens for about 2 weeks here. And so I'm just sometimes silly stuff, like ask questions. I'm like, hey, should I buy a new guitar or a new drum set? And just like this really just banal, regular, silly conversations we would have before class. And then I think on the first day of class, I do an AMA. So I go, you can ask me any personal question as long as it's not weird or, offensive. So like what question would you want to ask a professor? And so that throws them off because they're not used to that. So.
Yeah, I've done that too. That's fun. I kind of give my first day spiel, which sort of unpacks me. And I say, okay, so is there anything you want to know about me that I didn't ask or I didn't answer already? And almost anything is on the table. Like I put that caveat on that, and that's kind of fun.
One of the things that I was able to do this semester that is probably unique as a faculty member is I spent the spring semester in my parents' house teaching. We went to Florida for spring break and our flight was canceled coming home. And so we spent 5 months in Florida. So I can relate to, and this is a familiarity as well as a similarity, what it's like to be in your parents' house trying to be at school or at work. And I don't think that the students really realize that it's not just them going home. This happens throughout your entire life. You don't control the household when you arrive there.
Yes, I'm living that right now from the mom perspective with the college kid that just came home. Although she did just make me tea, so that was nice. I have spent some time talking about TikTok in my class, more so as a conversation or kind of a fun thing. And just because my actual children spend a lot of time with that. And then just the other day we have a final speech round right now, one of my students recorded a TikTok video as his visual aid, and he had it all labeled, and it was really, really fantastic. And he said that my chit chat about TikTok inspired his visual aid. So it was very clever. So that was fun.
Building on what Dave said too, one of the things is that they don't have that kind of hallway time for conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do as much of this semester, but I do know some people that did, where every day when they arrived at Zoom, if it was a synchronous meeting, for example, there would be an opening question. And so they could either do it in the chat or they could talk about it. And that way they at least got to know each other and the instructor a little bit better than if they were just kind of arriving right on time. It also got them to come a little bit earlier so they could participate in the discussion.
Yeah, that's neat. I use that. I'm sorry, Dave.
Oh, I was gonna say, to build on Michelle, as I'm learning to use these different systems, and we use I've started using Collaborate Ultra over Teams, because there's poll questions, because they were talking about engagement and how are they doing. So I was asked first questions like, how are you doing? And I'd put great, okay, treading water, and try to, and just because and just to get a temperature check of like somebody, thing, and then some just silly questions like, if you had to live on one food a week, what could it be? Pizza, hamburger? And someone who's like, one day I forgot to do it, was like, where's our question? So it became a norm in the class. And so.
Yeah, that's what I was going to have, that same conversation. I do this. I did this in my regular brick and mortar classes. I call it roll call response. And instead of calling the roll and saying Ann, and Ann says present, or David and he says present, I ask the question and it's already up on the board. And then when we get to days where we're just too busy for that down the line, they are angry because I don't have the question. So that's always fun.
Don used the word chit chat, and I think that's something we should include. I don't have the Google Doc open, so I don't know what you've been adding to it, Anne, but encouraging that chit chat, I think helps to make the classroom feel less formal.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
I just shared here. Let me know if you want me to keep it on share or not, but so you can see what I've been typing up. Here's the list of what I've got thus far.
Do we think we need to move down to familiarity yet?
I think so. We only have 8 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
I see here. All right. I think I was typing everything into.
Wait, do we have 2
Wait a
things?
second. I'm confused here. Sorry.
All right, I'm looking also. Hold on.
We have 3 actually.
We have 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, similarity and familiarity.
Okay, let me just move around some of the examples. I was typing them all into one group here. I'll work on that and then I can.
For similarity, one of the things I do is when I ask some of those chit chat questions or poll and that sort of thing, is I provide like my own answer. And so just this morning I asked, what was some good news from the last week? And we all kind of sat there and recognized that it was hard to focus on good news. But that helps to increase the similarity when I have answers to contribute as well.
Yeah, that's good. I try to make that part of every day, and especially the day that ends the week before the weekend. So whatever that day is for me, sometimes it's Wednesday, sometimes it's Friday, but I always I kind of take a pulse of what's going on in their weekend and what's going on in my weekend, sort of set that stage, and then I try to jot some notes down to circle back to specifics that students would say. I know one student was moving, their parents were moving their house and he was involved in that over Thanksgiving. So I made a note and I didn't lose it, which was remarkable that I asked them about that on Monday. So they really appreciate that.
Another way I try to show similarity is bringing up stories of what I learned as a college student when I was going through things similar to what I'm asking them to do. So I teach public speaking. The first speech I gave in a college class, I was hyperventilating, right? And so then they were like, oh, okay. Like they see that the similarity when I share some of those stories of how I experienced what I'm asking them to do.
My experience isn't quite as recent as Terry's, and so the way that I build that same similarity is by talking about my own children who are in college right now and how it is that it works for them and how I understand what it is that they're going through. So while I haven't recently gone through it, I can at least see it playing out and I can understand why some of the things they do are what they do.
I was also thinking that this past semester, it felt important to also reveal moments when I felt overwhelmed or when it was particularly challenging to be teaching amid the pandemic too, and not, like keeping it together, but also not trying to act like I wasn't being affected by external factors too, I think helped graduate students like in the pedagogy course.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the wrong virtual classroom one day, and for 15 minutes, I was like, where's everybody at? And then I got
That's awesome.
and they're like, where are you at? We all left. And I was like, oh man. I got and I'm like, well, we waited 15 minutes. I'm like, just a heads up, that 15 minutes rule is a myth.
It's a myth, right?
But like, seriously, I appreciate you reaching out. And I sent a message. I'm like, maybe we just call today a wash. And this is on me. And I'm like, I owned it. And I sent him I posted an announcement and I sent him a GroupMe. I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on. It's been a day. So I apologize if it's causing any problems. Let me know, if we need to meet up, or you have questions that are addressed that we would have addressed in the class. But I was just like, I don't know. I just owned it. I tend to do that anyway, because I kind of laughed at it, and but that's kind of the semester it's been. And so I've been kind of saying this in a lot of these, is like, So when I think you see it when students go to the wrong class on the first day, and I'm having this 2 months into the semester. So it's like, I understand, like, we're human.
That's great. One of the things I keep finding that a lot of what I do electronically through Zoom is pretty much either straight up the same or an adaptation of things that I do regularly in a classroom. And one of the things that I find useful is setting the expectations for how long it's going to take me to turn around some grading or evaluation. And I find that useful because I set the stage for them to know that, I'm managing your stuff, but I'm also managing, meetings and my family and all of those things. So I let them know that it's important for them to give me the time, but I also will let them know that I will do it in a timely manner because I appreciate that they want the responses and the feedback depending on what the assignment is. But I try to use that to let them know that time management skills are important and to encourage them to utilize their time management skills and not open up the assignment 2 days before that it's due and you were supposed to do 15 things before the actual due date. So I don't know if you got that, Anne, or however you wanted to.
Yes, I started putting here in the Similarity category. Instructor can discuss their own time management skills to demonstrate importance of these.
Awesome. And looks like, Michelle, you're leaving us at 3, but we only have about maybe 5 or 6 minutes left after that.
I can share here. I think the category that I wrote the least down for thus far is the familiarity category, though many of these categories seem to overlap a little bit. So I think some of the things were caught in previous categories. Do we have anything else we want to add here?
I think one of the familiarity things, sorry.
No, go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to say one of the familiarity things that I did, at least is the way they describe it there, it seems like it's kind of ritualized behaviors. So all of my assignments were due on either Sundays or Thursdays. And they knew that every Sunday or Thursday they were going to have something that they had to turn in. So kind of creating those ritualized kinds of things, I think helps with familiarity. And also choosing channels for communicating with them. It's really fun to try all of the new tools, but there's a big learning curve, and sometimes we don't think about that learning curve for our students. So I tried to stick with just 1 or 2 technologies rather than using the entire gamut.
I'm not sure where these 2 things go. The first one is I try to do pop-up office hours on Zoom. So I have my standard office hours where they're posted and it's open. But if I find myself sitting and working on something and I don't need to be all that present with that, I'll put a notice out in my announcements and just say, hey, pop-up office hour if you want to pop in. I get more use of those than I do my scheduled office hours, which is curious. I don't know where we would want that to go. And the other thing that I do is I like to provide video messages. And I like to, like I say, that I try to do the video messages in my natural habitat. So for example, if I'm at a lesson with one of my kids and I'm waiting in the car, I might get my phone out and record my video and post that into the announcements and just, provide either a recap of the day or something that's due or something that's coming up. I love that option as a, that whole natural habitat thing. Because part of my philosophy as an educator is I try to role model good behaviors. And I think that being a member of a community, whether that's my family or my neighborhood or, just how to, whatever it is, whatever community, it's a good thing to role model.
I don't know where this goes into. I guess this is like, this is an embarrassing moment is I got an email and I was cursing at it. I don't know. It's very visceral for me. And I was like, right before class started, and I was trying to get the classes early, and I didn't hit mute on my mic, and I was like, effing this, what the F, man, blah, 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 and and the students like started messaging like, I don't think he's talking about us, blah, 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 like this, and I had to like go, oh, shoot, sorry, I'm reading an email, and it's irritating me, so
being a Jersey girl, the F-bomb comes out, like after week 3, it just comes out.
so like they had to like, is he mad at us or is he mad? I was like, sorry, it's not you. It's this email right here. So
That's great.
I think that really speaks to the similarity, right? Like you experience the same emotional responses that they experience, and so they get to see that you're human.
Again, this is a pretty basic one for familiarity, how it's defined here. But I end every session reminding them that they can meet with me or send me emails, like reminding them of the channels that they have to reach out to me every time, right? And it doesn't seem to provide more, but maybe they feel like they can contact me if they want to.
I'm going to peek at the whole list real quick. So I moved away from all of you. One of the things I did with Informality early on is, and you know, the whole debate, it's been in some of the sessions this week that I've been in, about cameras on, requiring that, and different schools have different regulations about that. But one of the things that I did, which was actually sort of a learning experience for me, when we first pivoted back in March, I really felt that it was necessary for everybody to have their cameras on. And I was also almost offended when I had students taking my class from their bed. And then I realized that I had a college student upstairs taking her classes from her bed, because that really was the only place that she could be, right, with everybody and what was going on. So I talked about that, and when I realized it, I let them know that I get it, that everybody has their own issues in terms of their space and stuff, but it's always good for our ethos to care for that and put our best foot forward. So I actually have said to my students, you know, even if you have to be taking your class from your bed in your bedroom, please don't be lying down on your pillow, and put on some shoes. It gives it a little bit of a sense of formality for you, and they get a kick out of that. So that has worked well for the most part for me.
I was wondering what type of, I think within this technology gap issues, I've come up with that. Resources being, you know, in South Georgia, I don't know what it's like at Penn State or any of the other places, is I think the expectation is like with the video is not everybody has great video, so you let them do the audio because, you know, that both of them take up a lot of bandwidth. And then familiarity, like students, I've said this before, that think they're great at texting and TikToking, but not being able to navigate or find stuff, and being generations that probably grew up with, as it progresses, it's easier to find information versus if it's not right there. So dealing with that frustration is just trying to like, well, this seems commonsensical to me, but maybe not to that generation.
Early in the semester, I shared with them. So my older son is a college student, and he's, you know, Zooming in his classes. And I shared with them that right before I started class, I walked downstairs and saw my gardening hat over my son's computer while he's upstairs in bed. He had set it up for his Zoom class to turn on, and the camera would be on, but it would see the inside of my hat, and he could sleep in. And so I kind of let them know I was on to these tricks and what they lose from doing that. And I said, please listen to me. Well, my son doesn't listen to me. Please listen. You want to like be here and actually participate. So I'm not sure if that fits in with the similarity or the informality, but they laughed and they knew I knew when they weren't paying attention.
That's awesome. Anne, thanks for taking notes for us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I think everybody's back now. I was able to pop into the rooms and heard some really interesting discussions. And so what I'd like to do at this point is just have people kind of share some of theirs. And what I'll do is, these aren't in a real order. These are just the order they were in the article. So I'll just go for the first category for group 1 and then the first category for group 2 and kind of go around. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so you can see what they had typed in there. And so think about sharing 1 or 2 of these, kind of the story behind that in your groups. And then after each group presents on the subcategory, I'll ask the general group if they have anything to add, because I can just edit these documents in real time. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. And I'll let group 1 talk about self-disclosure.
We talked a lot about self-disclosure in our breakout room. This is Nicole, by the way. We talked about recording videos that show the inside of your home. I know Charlotte mentioned that she shares her cookie recipes and some news announcements, sharing details, you know, your favorite foods, your favorite movies, video games you like to play, what you've been binging on Netflix, in discussion responses. Like I said, sharing photos and pets of home life. Charlotte and Jamie, if you want to jump in here too, I'll mute myself so you can kind of talk about what you shared.
Let's see, what did I share? Well, we talked about whether or not recording your lectures is useful or not. And I want to do a survey next semester and ask the students, what is it that's working for you? And because I had one student, well, at least one of them, I was recording lectures that were like an hour and a half long, which would have been about how long I would talk during a week if we were in the classroom. And one student, as an aside, said something about falling asleep during my talks. And I thought, yeah, I'm getting kind of bored way in the middle too. So I started breaking it up into 15 and 20-minute segments. And I discovered too that they upload quicker, the technology works better. And I put video clips and things in the middle of them too, and then have that as the basis for discussion postings. And that seems to work. Let's see, yeah, and cookie recipes and other kinds of things. I've discovered that the discussion postings are a good place to reach students really quickly. And who was it that talked about recording responses to assignments? I didn't know about that.
I think it was Jamie.
I think Jamie talked about that in our group, but I've done that too, where you use the feature in whatever learning management system you've got to record audio feedback. I use that as an example in one of the, in another category here in approachability, the expressiveness category, but we've done that too, recording audio feedback.
Yeah, I was just trying to keep to the, I think it was self-disclosure that we were focusing on. I didn't mean to like hide myself at that instance.
No worries. And I think this is more about, I'm less concerned about getting these in the right categories and more concerned about people sharing strategies that have worked for them to be mediated.
I'm just a rule follower. Sorry.
I appreciate that. Mediatedly immediate, is that even a thing? Does anybody that wasn't in group 1 have any self-disclosure strategies that they may have used that you don't see here?
When we get to our group, Joe's going to share something that I thought was very good in terms of reaching a lot of these subcategories. So we're group 4. I'll let her end with that. Okay.
Let's go to group 2 and informality. So portraying informality and casualness. And they've got a lot of suggestions here. Do you want to give us a quick overview of one or two of these, group 2?
Sure. My name's Anne and I was in group 2, and I'll start us out. And then if group members have things to add, please feel free to jump in. So we talked about things like sort of the space that we are teaching from. So if we're teaching at home, kind of letting students know that that's where we are and who we maybe share the space with and what types of interruptions might occur, what to expect. And things like that. I had mentioned that sometimes I have 2 cats, and if they come on screen, I don't try to push them away. Maybe I'll sometimes show them to the class. And oftentimes I find that students will bring up their pets and kind of show them as well too. We had a great suggestion from a group member who said they put their preferred first name and pronouns on the screen too, so that students have that kind of interpersonal connection. They know what to refer to their instructor by, and it feels a little bit more casual with the first name. Another group member mentioned that they use GroupMe for class, and they use it for some more informal sharing, like sending pet pictures or creating some of the casual chit chat. We talked a lot about the casual chit chat that's easier to facilitate in the face-to-face setting than it can be in class. And GroupMe was one strategy that was used to facilitate some of that. And someone else pointed out a great idea, which was since we're all communicating from more kind of quote unquote informal spaces, sometimes it can be a great opportunity to even talk with students about, like, you might be in an informal space, but you can still think about what your ethos is in that space too. You know, like if you're in your bedroom, have you picked it up? Have you kind of paid attention to what's behind you? You know, are you wearing your pajamas? Are you wearing more formal clothes? You know, that you have choices to make in these situations, and they communicate different things. So think about, you know, the formality or informality of what they communicate. Group members, were there any other things you wanted to add?
Great. Any other suggestions from groups other than 2 on this particular subcategory? Yep, Charlotte.
Oh, okay. Yeah, one thing that I didn't realize at the time, I was just utilizing my family members because they were useful. My son is an engineer and my sister is a lawyer, a family lawyer. So I had both of them come on for different situations as guest speakers. And when I originally started, I didn't tell my class that I was related to either of these people. And they were looking, especially me and my sister, we look and sound a lot alike. And they were going, And in the chat, they were starting to ask, are you all related? Yeah, we are. And when my son started laughing when he was calling me Dr. Klessman, that's when they said, do you two know each other? I said, yeah, a little bit. So bringing your family members on, if you can find a reasonable reason to do it, seemed to work really well. They enjoyed meeting my family and realizing, my God, she is from around here. I lost my Southern accent when I moved away, but my sister still has hers. So grew up in Decatur, that cemented my relationship with my class.
Great.
I have a question about this. I started at the beginning of the semester kind of requesting that students, when they email me, to open with some sort of a salutation instead of just, you know, beginning the email mid-thought, because I had observed an erosion of, you know, just basic civility in the email genre. And I wonder if, and students all complied too, by the way. It was almost awkward how formally they would begin emails to me. So I'm wondering, I wonder, did I undercut this element of informality that correlates with positive impressions of professors?
That's a great question. And I think, like with nonverbal immediacy, I tell my new teachers about nonverbal immediacy and how to use that, but I also tell them you don't have to do 100% of these things. Like, I am terrible at remembering people's names. And that's one of the things is if you use your students' names, that helps you be more immediate. That's just not something I'm very good at. And then also one of the things that's recommended for nonverbal immediacy is touch of your students, which no, I'm not going to do that. No way. So I think if you use some of these things, you don't have to use all of them. Just be aware if you're not using one of them, where can you make it up in other areas? So if I'm not using students' names, I try to make it up and be more non-verbally immediate in other ways. So I think that's a great question. This is kind of like a buffet. You can pick and choose what's easy for you to do and what works.
I actually have an opinion on that. I think for me, it's an opportunity. I have specific directions for the high school students who are enrolled in my course. And I don't know if any of the actual student or traditional students read it or not, but I give them directions. This is how you should communicate with a college professor, ... Because I think for me, I believe that we have a bit of a responsibility to teach them that if they don't already know how to do that. So then I try to offset that kind of formal expectation with peppering other degrees of immediacy, like John talked about.
Awesome.
There's an article called "How to Email Your Professor without it being as annoying AF." That I share with the students. I'm like, this is just good protocol, and you're speaking their language, so some of them like it. You know, it helps out somewhat.
David, do you want to put that in as a link or a source citation in our chat?
I can. Sure.
Thank you.
Great. Let's move to group 3, and their first subcategory was humor. Can you share some of the things that you came up with?
Sure, I'm in charge of that. Speaking to the email thing, though, I don't know if this is a COVID thing, but is anyone else getting really a lot of emails with some variation on, I hope this email finds you well, and that your family is safe, or, like stuff like that? I find that triggering, honestly. Because if someone's emailing you, they probably want something, and it's really inauthentic to me. I don't know. And no offense if you're doing but maybe. Brandy had actually a cool idea that some people came up with at Virginia Tech related to just humorous things that they did, or kind of benefits of quarantine, like 6 fun things. And said it had some mixed results with students because some were not able to see the upside of quarantine. But one in particular that she mentioned was 6 things your dog did during the lockdown. And they did this with photographs and asked the students to do it. And so, as a bonding exercise, it worked pretty well. Tara had a great idea about integrating her cat into her kind of syllabus lecture or PowerPoint that she did. And she does a syllabus quiz, so having a question about the cat on there, which the students got a kick out of. Someone else mentioned having memes, so using humor in that way, memes that relate to whatever the content is, and it's sort of like your reward at the end of completing a module to have a laugh. So that's a good one. We weren't really too hip to the TikTok video, but but good for you if you can do it. Does that always involve dancing, or I don't fully get the TikTok, but so that's kind of some stuff that we came up with.
Great. Any other groups have anything to add for humor? Anything that you've used that's been successful?
Very similar, but when I upload the feedback for my students for their speeches, I always try to find like a funny GIF to put with it with their score. So like if I say like great job and their speech was about like why sleep is important, I'll put like a GIF of like a cute little cat sleeping in bed or something like that.
Great.
I learned I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I learned new lingo like no cap. And so I always, students always laugh when I'm like trying to sound hip and I make it sound awkward old man on purpose. I'm like, no capping, students. This is what's going on. And so, making fun of myself as a joke works out pretty well.
My 14-year-old daughter was horrified yesterday when I said somebody was extra. So I'm right there with you.
I used student emailed me, asked me, like, how was my Thanksgiving? I'm like, I just kicked it with the bay and the animals. So I hope they got a kick out of that.
Jamie, did you have something?
Yeah, this is, I guess, I forgot about it, into immediacy, but it's also turned out to be unexpected humor. I initially started asking questions when I'm fortunate to teach relatively small classes, certainly like 25, 30 is the tip top. So I do roll every day, not necessarily like at first I did introduction questions just to learn names, be like, oh, this person would be a lion tamer if she were to join the circus. But I got feedback saying that they really, really liked it. And so it sort of becomes at time like they have it's time for like them to razz each other like very good naturedly. I always answer the questions because I tell them I'm not going to ask them anything I'm not going to answer. And so it's everything from like, what incredibly common thing have you not done? What are you binging currently on Netflix or Hulu? And people like have to fess up to like watching The Vampire Diaries for the 3rd time. So it sort of works well, and it takes a few minutes, but I've always gotten good feedback on that, and it's then something I can integrate going on and be like, refer to the person whose first job was whatever, working on a golf course when it comes relevant in class.
Great, because that can work for audience analysis with speeches too down the line. Awesome. All right, let's have group 4 talk about their first category. Whoa, a lot there. Engagement. Highlight some of those examples in group 4, please.
Joe, are you going to report for us? Uh-oh, did we lose Joe?
No, I'm just shocked.
Okay. Oh.
We talked about a lot of great things. We talked I'm reading what we even all typed. Arian shared how she uses GroupMe for some of the things that she was just referring to, and that it seems to be a good forum for her to respond individually to students, but she also finds it as a great way to not have to answer the same questions multiple times. We talked about how if we do set boundaries to when students will hear back from us, that there may be a personal or interpersonal reason why, and in so doing and disclosing that we may appear more approachable. For instance, I spend weekends with my family. That's why I don't respond to emails over the weekend. And then the first one, I can't remember who was, I'm sorry, I can't recall who spoke about asking students their input of when it was that they, how they wanted to approach the course. And so by doing that, she could set forth, I'm sorry, I can't remember who spoke about it. Could you please speak up?
Oh yeah, that's okay. As one of the Laurens in our group.
There we go. There were two Laurens. Wonderful. Can you go ahead and share, Lauren?
Yes, so I just sent out a survey before the start of the semester, and we meet for class synchronously twice a week. So I asked students if they would prefer to have one day of the week be asynchronous with a recorded lecture and a participation activity, especially when we were taking 2 class periods to cover a single lesson. So then, because the majority of students did want to have one asynchronous day, I followed basically a flipped classroom format where I recorded like the boring meat and bones, the lecture on the first day, and on the second day we came together and we basically put the information to use, and I could see who had sort of read the chapter, maybe watched the recorded lecture, and who came to class completely clueless, but no shaming, just seen. And then as part of that same survey, I also asked students if they were dealing with any kind of COVID or non-COVID related life circumstances that they wanted me to know about before the semester started.
Great. Did anybody from the other 3 groups have anything that they thought of that would go here with engagement? Okay, well, we're getting close to the end here. I don't think we'll be able to get through all of the categories from all of the groups, but like I said, I will compile this all into a single document, and then I'll have Susan send that back out. And Sherry and I were talking about this yesterday, and I was just wondering if we had a couple of minutes. We've talked about these specific types of things, but this panel is also about engagement, not just immediacy. And one thing we've been noticing is students just kind of like disappearing or saying they had COVID because their roommates did and not answering emails for weeks. So I was just wondering if we could spend just a couple of minutes here at the end sharing any kind of strategies we've had for keeping students engaged throughout the semester. And I know we probably have a range of like synchronous or asynchronous or some face-to-face, but anything that you can share here, I know I would be very interested to hear, and hopefully it could be helpful to other people as well. So feel free to just kind of jump in and share some things that might have been challenges or ways that you've dealt with those.
Dawn?
Yeah, I was just going to offer, John and Sherry, thank you. One of the things that I've done a little bit differently this semester is I keep attendance, but I have a list in my office on my desk that has a handful of names of people that are missing more regularly. And then I'll also even add if they're missing assignments that they really shouldn't be. And I'm very purposeful and intentional in reaching out to them, which I'm doing differently than I would pre-COVID because of some of the things that John was just describing. I think that that's important to offer the patience and the grace and the flexibility that I think we all need in this weird time. So that's something that I've done. I've just had this little sheet and I send a note, and they really appreciate it usually. 9 times out of 10, it's they're honest and they say, I've just been a slacker and there's nothing going on. So then that opens up a whole different opportunity for me to share, well, let's work on some strategies and let me get you connected with X, Y, and Z to help you. So my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Thanks,
we have the system set up so if like a student has been missing assignments or missing class, and then that goes to the advisors, and I just tell them at the beginning of the semester, I have a rat list. Like if you miss an assignment, if you're like not showing up, I will rat you out. I'm just telling you up front because I'd rather stab you right now than in the back later. And so I was talking to one of the advisors. He says, like, I don't know how I got on Dr. Nelson's rat list, but I'll, you know, and so it's kind of out of fear. I mean, it wasn't meant to be that way. I just want to I be honest with them. I'm like, I'm not doing it to be mean, but I don't know what's going on in your life. And the advising team has access to information that I don't, so they can reach out. And because right now they've been finding out information about that the students have been dealing with depression or family members. And, you know, and I get it. The students don't feel comfortable at sharing every bit of their life. So it's been a nice, good buffer, and also let you see patterns too. Like if the students like you know, on the bubble for getting in real trouble because they're not doing this stuff. So, I mean, we're lucky enough that we have that support system here at our institution.
Yeah, that's great.
I pose 2 questions every week for each chapter that they have to respond to. And then I grade them. And altogether, the 15 or so entries will comprise 1 grade. And if they miss a couple, they'll see my comment, nothing submitted, F. And, you know, after a couple of them, they usually email me to explain, you know, why they missed or something. So it's a way of checking attendance without checking attendance. And it's I think it's kept them engaged to some extent, at least.
Nice.
We're getting real close on time here. Are there any other strategies that you all want to share about things that you've done to try to just maintain this connection with students in a time when we can't really physically be with them like normally?
Yeah, I had, so both in the spring when we were just half online and then this semester when we were completely online, I've ended up having small group projects at the end of the semester. And in some of the courses, students were required to facilitate a discussion or, you know, lead a mini workshop live in class. And for other projects, students were just required to work on something, turn it in, and then write up a reflection paper about what that process was like. And in the latter, the reflection paper was actually worth more points than the deliverable itself, because I wanted them to think about what did they do to set themselves up for success collaboratively, what did they fail to do, and how would they like to put better procedures in place to succeed with future small group online projects in the future. And I found that this helped with engagement in a couple of different ways and directions. So the students, you know, they're obviously accountable to each other. And then when they were in charge of leading their classmates, they were also really invested in that. And then for me, because I got to see much longer posts than their typically like 300-word reflections that I'm already grading on a weekly basis, I felt like I got to know them really well, because I got to know how they saw the process. And then I also got to learn about how all of their teammates saw them and assessed them in their evaluations of each other. So after that, like we've had maybe 2 weeks remaining. Every time now I see one of their very minor discussion board posts and I see their name, I'm like, oh, I have all of these associations with you now and how you work with others. And I have a much clearer picture. So I feel like that went pretty well.
Very nice. Well, I think we've run out of time. And I don't know if we have back-to-back panels, so we'll be courteous and polite, which is one of our subcategories of an upcoming panel, should there be one. And so I want to thank everybody for participating. I really enjoyed my small group discussion, and I'm sure that you all did as well. And be looking for the document that John will compile. Several of you have asked for the syllabus stimuli that we used in our study. And I will forward that as well, maybe in the same email that John will send to Susan, and we'll make sure that everybody gets access to that. So,
thanks, everybody. It was great to see all of you.
yes, nice to see you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Great.
Take care.